Hi, it's Rebecca Lane, and the last thing that I want to talk about is the conclusion. Okay, so when we're thinking about our conclusion, and this worksheet really does a good summary here, when we're thinking about a conclusion, we want to pick the most relevant moment from main point 1, most relevant moment from main point 2, and the most relevant moment from main point 3. We want to say those in really short summaries, back to back to back. And the reason we do this is to remind people of this journey that they've been on. Ideally, these 3 moments of information will add together to really heighten that emotional sense of urgency that you've been building throughout your entire speech. Okay, and then finally, we want to move on to this call to action. And when we're talking about the call to action, remember I'm looking for a 2-part compliance strategy. So what you see right here, this call to action, we want to know specifically what is that tiny thing that you want the audience to do. Do you want them, because I know a lot of times we have these big ideas of what we want them to do. Like we want them to agree with us, and we want them to change their lives. But nobody's going to change their life immediately. And changing your life is a massive concept, right? So what we want to do is give people something really, really small and really, really tangible. Something that they can do right now before you even sit down from your speech, right? Okay, so when we're doing this, so we want them to commit to something. Now remember, we're using that compliance tactic that we talked about in class. It's either door in the face or foot in the door. And one word of advice on both of these things is when we're talking about these compliance tactics, so you're basically asking them to do 2 things. You have to commit to the first thing that you say, even though the first thing is either like your foot in the door or it's that thing that you expect them to say, no way, I won't do this. You have to ask that first question with conviction, like it's the last thing that you're going to say. If not, we don't believe you. We know there's a way out, and we know that we don't have to commit. Okay? So think about that, and then remember that the very last thing you say is the thing that you are planning for us to do, that really simple task that we can finish right now. Okay, so let's look at how this student did. So first, we've got fact from main point number 1, Macs are better than PCs when it comes down to what we do here at Full Sail. Okay, that kind of summarizes, sort of. I mean, when you look up here, what did he really say? They're reliable, they don't depreciate as much, people who use graphics want to use Macs, and it's going to be more stable. So, I mean, kind of, but that's not exactly the argument. We can go with that. Macs are better than PCs. And we're only going with one supporting point, right? So actually, yeah, totally. The Macs, the graphics, right? Okay, so let's look at number 2. The Mac is slowly beginning to take over the market. That's definitely what he talked about here in this graph, right? How the sales are going up, the gap is closing. And then the third main point is it's simple for what we do here at Full Sail. Mac is the better option. Okay, so look at how we've got this repetition here. Do you see how this repetition doesn't build that intensity? So what this student could have done is he could have said, Macs are less likely to crash, they're taking over the market anyway, and I don't know anybody who's got a death story, who's got a PC death story who owned a Mac, or something like that. Or you could even say, make it even more personal, right? So if you want to say what we do at Full Sail, you could say, and I don't know anybody with a Mac whose computer crashed after they finished their graphic design project. Something like that. It doesn't have to be exactly, and ideally it's going to be honest, right? So if you do know somebody whose computer crashed and they had a Mac, then you're not going to say that example, right? But that's how you would do that summary. Okay, so let's move on to this call to action. This specific thing. All right, so his compliance tactic, he thinks, is he said, do you all love your Macs? Okay, so we can rephrase this, right? we can rephrase this by saying, raise your hand if you love your Mac. All right, and that is a really low entry, so that would be foot in the door, right? Okay, so raise your hand if you love your Mac. And then he says, take good care of them because in a few years down the road, they might be one of your best friends. Okay, so this doesn't actually fit this compliance tactic, right? Because he hasn't really asked us to commit to doing anything. So he's actually, so think about what else could he have said. He could have said, how many of you will commit to buying a Mac in the future? How many of you will get your friends to buy a Mac? Raise your hand. How many of you will advocate for Macs on Facebook? There are lots of options, but there needs to be something that we can actually do. So this is a compliance tactic that didn't really follow those directions, right? All right, and the last thing the student did really well is the student really did this APA source citation. That was well done. All right, so if you have any questions, you can always call me on Google Voice, and you can always email me too. I hope that this was a helpful video. Thanks so much. Bye.